یا ابا عبدالله بهر رضای مادرت.
There are countries that make people think of culture history or landscapes. But there are also some whose names, just by hearing them, are enough to raise a series of questions like, what the hell is going on over there? Iran after the attack in mid-2025 is a typical example. A place where food prices are climbing faster than the number of followers of a hot TikToker, where women can be arrested just for choosing the wrong color scarf, and where electricity prices increase, then cut, then increase again, like a never-ending joke. But what is more worth mentioning is that beneath the layers of rubble and the daily propaganda, there is a much bigger story waiting to be revealed. Number 1. The fateful attack. June 13, 2025 is not simply a milestone in regional military history. It is the day when all assumptions about Iran's defense capabilities were erased in less than 72 hours. Israel's Operation Lion Rising focused not only on nuclear facilities, but also on energy infrastructure, military command centers, and strategic logistics depots. According to data from the Center for Middle East Conflict Analysis, on the first day alone, more than 40 key military and economic targets across Iran were attacked with long-range missiles and drones. The success rate in neutralizing the targets was recorded at 86%. Sites such as the Natanz nuclear complex, the fuel depot in Tehran, and the power distribution station in Yazd were all hit. This led to a chain reaction, widespread power outages in 5 major provinces.
ما منتظریم چون رزمندگان ما شجاع هستن و اسرائیل رو که شخم میزنن هیچی آمریکا رو سر جاش میشینن و انشاءالله اسرائیل رو خاورمیانه محو میکنیم.
Water supplies were disrupted due to pump stations being shut down, and urban traffic control systems were almost paralyzed. At the same time, Iran's financial markets collapsed in less than 24 hours. The rial lost nearly 18% of its value in just 3 trading sessions. At wholesale markets, food prices rose 30% in the first week after the attack. These numbers were evident not only on electronic billboards in financial centers, but also in the long lines of people lining up to buy cooking oil rice and medicine. The bigger problem is the near-zero pace of recovery. Reconstruction efforts are hampered by the fact that Iran's foreign exchange reserves have been depleted since the 4th quarter of 2024 due to previous international sanctions. The International Monetary Fund predicts that without an emergency infusion of capital, Iran's GDP growth rate will plunge to -1.2% in 2025, marking the sharpest contraction in nearly 30 years. How could an economy so accustomed to sanctions fall into crisis so quickly in just a few days? The answer lies in the fragility of Iran's 2-decade-old structure. 65% of the national budget depends on oil and gas exports. With energy storage and transportation facilities knocked out, that source of revenue virtually dried up. Domestic markets already tight on goods were further squeezed. Distribution systems were disrupted by a lack of fuel. Containers of imported food sat unattended outside the port of Bandar Abbas because there were no trucks or manpower to transport them inland. Another notable phenomenon is the rapid decline in public trust. In field surveys conducted by the Iranian Center for Social Research just a month after the attack, more than 72% of people in major cities such as Tehran, Isfahan, and Shiraz said they no longer had confidence in the central government's ability to protect civilians. the number of people who began hoarding food water and foreign currency increased fivefold compared to the same period last year. Number 2. Post-crisis purge system. When the defenses were breached, the Iranian regime's first response was not to rebuild or provide relief, but to tighten control. The goal was not just to prevent external instability, but also to plug any loopholes within. The state security apparatus immediately activated extensive surveillance measures. International phone lines were cut in many provinces. Broadband internet speeds were limited, and mobile networks were completely blocked in areas at high risk of protests. In the 2 weeks following the attack, arrests for national security crimes increased by more than 300% compared to the same period last year. Commercial printers were required to review the content of every leaflet and book before it could be published. Gatherings of more than 3 people in public places in southern provinces were classified as disorderly conduct, subject to criminal prosecution. The government has also set up a mobile population control system. Security has been increased at all checkpoints at the entrances to Tehran, Mashhad, and Shiraz. Intercity buses are being stopped randomly, and identification documents are being checked thoroughly, especially for young people between the ages of 18 and 35. Amid this backdrop, a remarkable phenomenon has emerged: a sharp increase in internal migration, according to estimates by the Iranian Population Data Organization. In the first month after the airstrikes, some 120,000 people left major cities for rural areas or border areas where security forces were less present. This mass movement has had a domino effect on social security areas receiving the migrants face shortages of food and medical services. So, when a government faces challenges from both outside and inside, at what point does it consider the entire population a potential threat? The answer lies not in a legal document, but in the frequency of random administrative checks, the number of illegally recorded phone calls, and the heavy presence of security forces on the streets. All of these developments reflect a clear reality. The more a government's power is threatened, the more individual freedoms are eroded. Living space, freedom of speech, and even the right to move are now luxuries that most Iranians can only remember, not own. Number 3. When poverty and pollution become normal. The disruption to the energy supply chain following the airstrikes created an unprecedented ripple effect. More than 40% of the country's power plants were paralyzed. Many residential areas were forced to endure rolling blackouts lasting 12 to 16 hours a day. Water systems in many southern and eastern provinces of Iran were down by up to 60%, leaving tens of thousands of households without water for extended periods. The immediate consequence has been a dramatic rise in food prices. The price of a bag of average-grade rice has risen from 250,000 rials to nearly 800,000 rials in just 3 weeks. Fresh milk, already scarce due to a lack of electricity to storage facilities, has become a luxury. Meat and poultry have virtually disappeared from traditional markets in Tehran, Isfahan, and Shiraz. Air quality in major cities has also gone from red alert to unmeasurable by standard monitoring equipment. A toxic gas leak from damaged petrochemical facilities has caused SO2 and NOx levels in some western districts of Tehran to exceed safety limits by up to 4 times for several consecutive days. At some air monitoring stations, the AQI has exceeded 500, the maximum level on the international scale. In a situation where the whole country is locked down by an energy crisis and an environmental crisis, how long will the people's patience last? Because just waiting in line to buy clean water under the 40°C sun has become a test of physical and mental endurance. The long-term impact is beginning to be felt in the labor market. Industrial zones on the outskirts that used to employ hundreds of thousands of workers have closed en masse due to power and fuel shortages. The official unemployment rate announced by Iran's Ministry of Labor in the second quarter of 2025 exceeded 19%, the highest since 1994. Unpaid work, temporary layoffs, and reduced working hours are widespread in the industrial provinces of Khuzestan, Kerman, and Fars. All economic indicators point to a full-blown recession. Industrial production fell 28% year-on-year. Exports fell more than 50%, largely due to transport disruptions and shortages of raw materials. The health system, already weakened, is barely functioning, with supplies of medicines and medical equipment not enough to last more than 30 days, according to international humanitarian organizations. In such a situation, the story of daily livelihood is no longer a matter of numbers. It becomes a question of survival for each household, each child, each worker who is used to crises but has never faced such a deep and widespread shock. Number 4. Between economic constraints and social limits. In the overall picture of the economic and environmental crisis following the attacks, Iranian women are becoming the group that suffers the most. Not only because of the loss of livelihoods and lack of basic necessities, but also because of the increasingly tight legal and social barriers around them. The mandatory dress code became a daily tool of control. Leaving home without covering one's hair or wearing the proper attire meant risking being stopped and manhandled. At checkpoints around the city, law enforcement doubled in size, focusing on areas frequented by women such as food markets, bus stations, and public hospitals. Alongside the administrative measures is a new wave of financial penalties. Under the regulations which were introduced in mid-June, first-time offenders can be fined the equivalent of $100, a figure far exceeding the average monthly income of many female manual workers. Repeat offenders face forced labor in public sanitation facilities or waste recycling centers. In the education sector, gender restrictions continue to tighten. Several technical universities in Tehran, Tabriz, and Qom have suspended female enrollment in mechanical engineering, information technology, and materials science, citing prioritizing resources for national security and defense sectors. This has led to a 40% increase in the number of female students who have dropped out of school compared to the previous year. Opportunities for women in the labor market are becoming increasingly scarce. According to the latest statistics from the Iranian Labor Analysis Center, more than 60% of women working in the service sector have lost their jobs after small businesses were forced to close due to the energy crisis. The health sector, a mainstay for many female workers, has also cut more than 25% of its contract workforce due to a lack of operating budgets. Amidst this series of difficulties, one thing worth noting is the emergence of spontaneous groups within the women's community. They do not organize protests or marches, but form small networks groups, teaching at home groups, sharing food groups, distributing masks and antibiotics in poor residential areas. When job opportunities are scarce, education is limited, and freedom of movement is almost eliminated. What is the survival option for women who are caught between two choices: silent obedience or taking risks to find a way out? The persistent pressure has forced many people into informal jobs to survive, from selling goods in spontaneous markets, working in unlicensed handloom workshops, to working in waste treatment facilities with incomes as low as 1/5 of the national minimum wage. What is even more remarkable is the speed with which discontent is spreading. According to an internal survey by the Iranian Institute for Social Research, the proportion of women between the ages of 20 and 40 who want to leave the country has increased from 37% last year to nearly 64% in just the past 3 months. The clearest sign of this change is not in the statistics. It is in the wary eyes that pass through checkpoints, in the way conversations turn to whispers when strangers approach, and in the scrawled words on old walls on the outskirts of Tehran. We are still here, and we are not over. Number 5. Culture survival in the middle of crisis. Amid the dust-covered streets and the devastation-scarred buildings, Iranian culture has not disappeared. It has merely changed its expression. Public poetry readings that were once a daily event in Shiraz's parks have been replaced by brief gatherings in basements dimly lit by a few old flashlights. The poems are no longer odes to spring or love, but rather themes of survival resistance and dignity in a tightly controlled environment. In Yazd, a city famous for its Zoroastrian fire temple, a fire that has burned continuously for centuries is kept alive despite fuel being so scarce that local authorities ration kerosene by the liter. Residents of the area see the fire as more than just a religious belief. It is also a symbol of the community's enduring spirit. In small villages like Abiane, where people have long lived a harsh life, hand weaving continues, although cotton is now recycled from old cloth. Wearing traditional clothing on a regular basis is no longer simply a cultural thing, but an act of identity in the face of forced assimilation under new political rules. One thing worth noting is the quiet resurgence of street art. Graffiti has begun to appear on many walls around Tehran and Mashhad. The content is not simply a political call, but also a symbol of the desire to breathe, to live, and to speak out. Images of broken chains, open doors, and the slogan "Oxygen" is a basic right appear in many neighborhoods. In Isfahan, groups of former students who had been part of the protests in previous years have turned to small workshops on ancient Persian history. These sessions have no formal curriculum or chalkboards, but people still come regularly just to hear stories about the Achaemenid or Sassanid periods. It's not just about knowledge, it's about maintaining a sense of being part of something bigger than the present. When even a poetry reading or a weaving session can be controlled, where is the limit to interference in cultural life? Because every time a wall is painted over, every time a woman wears a bright color on the street, or a group of children play Persian kings in a small alley. These are small actions that carry the weight of a declaration. We are still living what we believe Iran is. Number 6. Iran is on the path of unstable cities. The picture of Iran's post-June 2025 crisis is not just a local story. Some similarities between Iran and other regions of conflict and recession around the world are beginning to emerge. Kashmir in India and Detroit in the US come as two of the closest comparisons, despite their different geographical, historical, and political contexts. In Kashmir, the years of intense internal conflict have had lasting psychosocial consequences. The heavy security presence, widespread internet shutdowns, and random civilian checks have clear parallels to Iran today. Central areas in Tehran and Mashhad now have checkpoints similar to the sensitive areas in Srinagar a few years ago. Another factor is the impact of information control. In Kashmir at its peak, internet outages lasting several months caused the freelance job market to freeze and e-commerce businesses to collapse en masse. In Iran, mobile internet outages averaged 9 hours a day in the western provinces by the end of June, depriving millions of workers who rely on the digital economy of income. The economic perspective offers another point of comparison: Detroit after the 2000s. The city that was once an American industrial icon has spiraled into bankruptcy, population loss, and localized riots. Detroit's unemployment rate once reached 28%, leading to a chain reaction of public services and social security collapse. With Iran's unemployment rate now exceeding 19%, many international economists warn that the Detroitization scenario is repeating itself in its own unique way. The difference lies in social control. While Detroit is a story of a free market economy gone bust, Iran is a model that combines economic crisis with political repression. The only similarity between the two is the rate of decline in human development indicators. Iran's HDI, which hovered around 0.77 in 2022, has now fallen to nearly 0.7 by mid-2025, according to preliminary estimates from international organizations. When a country is forced to be short of money, short of freedom, and short of trust, all at once, how long does it take for social reactions to spiral out of control? Comparisons to Kashmir or Detroit are only a snapshot. What is happening in Iran is a brutal test of a political system that thrives on checks and balances. Number 7. When silence is no longer an option. Tight controls on information, the economy, and social life have not been able to completely stop the underground resistance efforts that are taking shape inside Iran. While official media outlets are censored word for word, an informal messaging ecosystem is thriving. Small groups, mostly young people and urban workers, exploit any remaining gaps in the internet to spread legal self-defense guides, basic first aid, and information about secret distribution points. Cryptocurrency use spiked in the 3 months after the strikes. According to one global exchange, transactions from Iran in the second quarter of 2025 were 4 times higher than the same period a year earlier, reflecting a growing search for ways to move assets around central bank controls. International fundraising campaigns, once sporadic, are now a regular occurrence, with dozens of wallet addresses shared in private chat groups. Another indication of the level of social discontent is the number of spontaneous strikes in heavy industry and essential services. In June alone, there were more than 120 short-term work stoppages in food processing plants, small oil refineries, and urban transport systems. Although they lasted only a few hours to a day, their frequency suggests that underground organizing is on the rise. The question now arises: when even basic actions like sharing medical information or organizing a class can carry the risk of being punished, what motivates people to take risks? The answer can be found in recent statistics on social psychology. According to a large-scale survey by the Middle East Institute of Sociology, more than 68% of Iranians aged 18 to 35 said they felt nothing to lose after the events since June 2025. The inevitable consequence of this state of mind is the formation of a new culture of resistance. No more noisy street demonstrations, like in 2022. No more banners on large squares. Instead, there are small, continuous, and difficult-to-control actions, from falsifying travel permits, distributing unregistered food, to printing leaflets with mini printers hidden in the trunk of a car. Number 8. Limits of tolerance and the risk of social disorder. After 3 months of continuous crisis, economic, social, and security indicators all suggest that Iran is approaching a dangerous threshold. Inflation has reached 65%, unemployment has surpassed 19%, and public services have been largely paralyzed. In an environment where food, clean water, and air are scarce, the patience of the population is not infinite. One final question that needs to be asked. When economic, political, and social factors collapse at the same time, it is only a matter of time before a major backlash occurs. The story of Iran after June 2025 is not just about recession numbers, long water lines, or cold economic reports. It is about the tug-of-war between a system trying to hold on to control and a society that is losing patience. What is happening here can be a wake-up call for any country. If today's content gives you a new perspective, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the NVL Travel Documentary channel to follow the journeys to explore the hidden corners of the world. Waiting to read your comments below. Timeline.